This is freaking insane. This is the thing I need to take what I'm doing in real estate to another level. This guy, Chris, has got to be a sleazeball. Should all rewind that and re-listen to it. The entire system is corrupt.
Plenty of conspiracy theories right now.
What's your favorite creature of Jekyll Island? Flat earthers.
Blackstone, BlackRock.
I really dislike IULs, but at the same time, they help.
Oh, I'm about ready to fight.
Hear me out on this.
What's going on, everybody? Chris Naugle here with the Money School podcast, where we talk about the truth about money. Not only that, we talk about how you can take back control of your money by you becoming your own bank. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about privatized banking and the infinite banking concepts, but I'm not going to be the one talking about it. My guest, the one, the only, the famous, the famous Mr. Burr.
We're just going in?
You just got to roll.
All right.
You're now a urologist, so take it from there.
Well, thanks, man. I didn't know I was a urologist.
It sounded good. I was practicing New York, and urology just kind of came into my mind. And
yeah,
the discussion we had offline about like when you send text and my rebuttal to that, I just thought urology and your profession was perfectly suited.
It makes sense. Mm-hmm. And when I hear the one, the only Mr. Burr, I'm like, it's not right. My dad is Mr. Burr. It's just Mr. Burr's my branding. So whenever I hear that,
well, son of a bitch, now we got to start this whole thing over again.
But it's so funny, man. When I meet people, they know me as Mr. Burr from my social media, and they'll be like, Mr. Burr, hey, and I'm like, please call me Devin. Like, I feel like you're talking to my dad when you say Mr. Burr.
It does sound a bit weird, but that's how you branded yourself.
Yeah, whatever. We roll with it.
Yeah, well, I like it. Do you have that necklace that says Mr. Burr?
I do,
Can you
yeah.
show the audience that? See, so when you're thinking about, do you call him Devin or do you call him Mr. Burr? It's like he wears Mr. Burr.
Yep.
Well, let's get down into it. So I love your story, and when I first met you, it was interesting. So I think that's where we start. Tell everybody like what you were doing before you became your own banker, and then how you got turned on to the infinite banking concept, and then you had a couple missteps, but you found your footing.
Well, yeah, man. So the way it really started was I was doing real estate full time. I'd left my job in corporate America. I was a loan officer and started doing real estate. And I was getting all my real estate deals from going to local meetups. And from January 11th was my first deal. It was a wholesale deal. Till March when COVID hit, I did 8 real estate deals. They were all just JVing stuff, getting wholesale deals and, daisy chaining it. So I would do that a lot. And then I started doing some flips. So I was doing pretty well as a new real estate investor. And COVID hit like March 15th of 2020. Meetups went away. So like I was just sitting at my house, like, what am I going to do now? So I started thinking, I got to work on myself. I got to become more valuable. So I started reading books. I started, listening to podcasts. And I heard you on a podcast with Steve Trang. So it was just a local podcast in Phoenix that I'd listen to all the time.
How big was that podcast back then? Do you remember?
It was pretty good size.
Was it?
Pretty good size. And just like everyone local there, like that was the podcast. So everyone would like listen to that one. I listened to it all the time as like a newbie investor just to learn more about real estate investing. And I heard you on there and I'm like, becoming the bank. That just makes so much sense, especially from being a loan officer where I dealt with interest rates, amortization, how everything worked. Being the bank just made sense to me. It kind of just clicked. And I went down a rabbit hole. I mean, I was consuming all of your content. Friends of ours now that I've met, Caleb Williams, Chris Kirkpatrick. I'm just geeking out on this concept of becoming the bank. And then like, I got to do this. I just have to do it. So I'm like, well, why don't I just reach out to the guy that I learned from? So I slid into your DMs, if you remember this. And I'm like, hey bro, heard you on a podcast. I'd like to, get one of these policies and start doing this. And you're like, all right, have you watched the 90-minute video? And I'm like, what 90-minute video? And you're like, you have to watch this video, watch this and you and I can jump on a call. And I'm like, all right, cool. I remember watching this video and my mind was blown. I'm like, this is freaking insane. If this is real, this is the thing I need to take what I'm doing in real estate to another level. So yeah, watch the video, got on a call with you. And I'm thinking I'm going to put all my capital into this because I was doing, again, flips and using my money. I was using some private money and hard money. But I'm like, I got about 300 grand. I'm going to put that into one big policy. If you remember, I'm doing this big policy. And then I had a little birdie in my ear.
Yeah, you sort of disappeared. You went ghost on me. I'm like, here's another.
Yeah. Yeah, I had, I'm not going to say names, but it was another agent that we both know of that was kind of whining and dining me to get my money over to him to do an IUL.
Describe whining and dining.
Oh, this guy literally bought me bottles of wine. They were shipped to my house.
Really, wine?
It was actually some pretty good wine, but after learning how much he made off me, I'm like, he could have bought some better wine, But yeah, so he literally bought me wine. He invited me out to his Airbnb in Lake Tahoe. Stayed out there. We're talking all the time on the phone. I'm like, this is a cool guy. He's like, we were becoming like good friends, I thought. And I'm out at his Airbnb. I think the policies had just gotten approved, the big one that I was going to do. This was May of 2020. I'm out there and I'm like, yeah, so he's telling me about this IUL stuff. And I'm like, cool. Yeah, I'm going to do this infinite banking you're talking about. I'm doing it with a whole life policy. And he's like, dude, who are you doing it with? I said, oh, Chris Naugle. How much are you doing? I told him the amount. He's like, don't do it. This is how he scams people. He tells them that you can use this money right away to become your own bank. He literally told me this: there's not an insurance company in the nation where you can do that, where you can put money in and immediately use it. I'm thinking this is like a friend of mine. He's got my best interest in mind. He was a fiduciary. So I'm thinking fiduciary, they're like supposed to have your best interest in mind. I'm like, he can't be steering me wrong. This guy, Chris, has got to be a sleazeball. So I remember I get back from this trip and I hit you up and I'm like, hey, Chris, that policy, it's approved. Let's maybe scale back a little bit. You're like, yeah, how much you thinking? I'm like, let's do like 6,000.
I remember that.
Because I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy is telling me I can put money in and then I can use it, but I can't. If I put 6,000 in, it's not going to change my life. Like, I can't use that money, whatever. It'll take some time to accumulate the cash value. I'll be fine. If I put all my capital in, then I'd be screwed. So I'm like, yeah, I'll put $6,000. And then we did it. And then I took a policy loan as soon as the policy funded, like the next day.
The ink was still wet.
Yeah, for sure. You were probably in the back room like, this guy's gonna use his 10-day right of rescission, his free look period.
Watching my timer. Oh, one more day. Mr. Burr's got one more day before he can 10-day this.
Yeah, so man, I did the policy loan, and I think it was like $5,100 out of 6,000 I could use right away. And I saw that and I was like, it's real. Cool. So I took that 5,000. Crazy that how like my first time using the concept kind of just fell on my plate. I had a friend who was buying their first rental and they didn't have money for the closing costs. It was like $4,500, something like that. So I'm like, she's telling me, oh yeah, I'm buying this rental. I'm really excited about it. I just don't have money for the down payment or for the closing costs. I got to get like a personal loan. It's going to be like 25%. I told her, well, I'll just lend it to you at 15. She was like, you'll do that? I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I used my policy, lent it to her at 15. She was paying me monthly. And I just took the money, put it back in the policy. The whole time the $6,000 continued to compound and grow inside the policy. And when I saw that happen, I was like, this is unreal. So then if you remember, I hit you up and I'm like, I need 2 more policies.
I do remember that.
Need a big one on me, big one on my wife. So I got $150,000 on my wife, $125,000 on me annually. Put those in, immediately used the money, deployed them into other deals, and just started just using the concept like crazy. So this was, again, May, my first one. And then by December, I had 4 policies.
And I remember that's right around the time we did that case study for the YouTube channel of you.
Yeah.
I think how you made money 4 or 5 times on the same dollar.
Yeah.
That was a phenomenal video.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
actually, if any of you are watching this, you should go back. It's an old one, but go back in my YouTube channel at the Chris Naugle and watch that original case study with Mr. Burr, Devin Burr, to you.
Yes. I'll never forget that though, because at the time we had this house that I actually really missed the house, but it was just too small for us. It was a 3-bedroom. I didn't have an office. My wife worked from home. I worked from home. My office was like legitimately our laundry room. So I set up like everything in the back, and there was like natural light coming in from the laundry room, but I didn't have anything to put my computer, the cameras on. I had like a shoebox, and then my laptop was the camera, and it was just such a makeshift office, and washer and dryer right next to me.
Must have smelled good. Fresh laundry.
It depends on if it was gym day or not.
Oh, yeah.
But I'll never forget that call, because I was like, well, actually, no, now I think about it, I didn't even make that into my office yet. At the time, I just sat in my room, like our master bedroom, and that was where we recorded that call from. Didn't have a chair. I'm sitting on like one of those Bosu balls, and I'll never forget that call, because I just remember I'm like, this could be really fun, like making more of this content. And it was November, I believe, of 2020. Making more of this content, working more with Chris. And that's when I really started leaning into the social media and like teaching people this concept.
But you forgot to tell the story about what happened to that fiduciary financial advisor that sent you a really not so good wine.
Oh gosh, this is
because now you proved concept. You literally did what he said you could not do. So what were your thoughts about him? And did you call him? Did you do policies with him? What happened there?
Yeah, so I ended up doing 2 policies with him. They were IULs, and I did those right before I did the $6,000 one with you, the first policy. So the IULs, one on me, one on my wife. One on me was $12,000, one on her was $6,000, I believe. So $18,000 a year is what we were putting in. As soon as I did that, and then I did the policy with you, I couldn't get a hold of the guy. Like, he wasn't calling me anymore. Like literally.
Right when the policy went in force, he stopped calling you back?
I think right when the one that I did with you went in force. So
he knew that went in force?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, yeah, he wasn't answering calls. Like, we had a trip planned to go to his Airbnb again, like me and my wife, just us two with his wife. Literally, we're getting ready to go to the airport. We packed up. She took days off work. He's like, oh man, so sorry. Like, the Airbnb got double booked. It was a little fishy, but, yeah. So basically, long story short, like, he was the one that like was kind of the sleazeball, for lack of better terms, because what's crazy was I couldn't use any of that money he put in. It was exactly what he said yours was going to be like. So I had those policies for 3 years. So I put in $18,000 for 3 years. What's that? $54,000. My cash value, $4,000. So I'd put in 54. At the end of that third year, I could use $4,000. And here's the craziest thing. I'll never forget this. You might remember this too, is I think it was 2021, maybe mid 2021. So I'd already been on the team, starting to do policies, writing them myself. And I called you. I had a question about something, and you just seemed like aggravated about something. I'm like, how you doing, man? What's up? And he's like, oh, you're just like, man, I got this freaking agent suing me for some BS.
He wasn't suing me, but he turned me into the New York State Financial Service, or the New York State Financial Services. Yeah, put a complaint in.
Yeah, so you're telling me what this complaint is. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Sorry you're dealing with that. And I kind of dug a little bit. I'm like, where's the agent from? You're like, oh, it's this freaking guy that does IULs out of California. And then you said the city. I knew where that guy lived, out of California. And I'm like, out of curiosity, is his name? And I gave his name, and you were like, how do you know? And I'm like, oh man, remember that IUL guy I told you about? It was the same guy. Insane. So
he was so upset that you did business with me, and probably so upset that actually it worked and did exactly how I taught it, that he went and filed a complaint against me, saying that all the stuff on my website wasn't true and it was false claims. Yet his website had all the same things. Literally, like, he had like almost probably gone to my website and just copied everything and then put his name on it.
Right.
But yet his website said all the same things, and yet he's filing a complaint against me. And I fought that thing, with an attorney, because that's just how you have to do it. There's no way, you can't just be like, he's lying. You got to go through the process. It took about, I can't remember, 6-8 months, because New York State's the toughest. I think of every state, New York State financial services is the toughest one. And they kept just coming back, more questions. I just kept showing them all the stuff. And finally, they ended up dropping the case. It was like $8,000 in legal, but they just totally dropped it, and that's just end of story there. But he cost me $8,000 and whatever my time was worth, just because
he probably
was
did that.
upset because you didn't do more business with him.
Well, if you think about it, and now that I know how things work, I didn't know back then. I was sold on the IUL, right? But now that I know how they work and how they're structured and how you can get paid as the agent, so I put in $18,000, right? First year, he legitimately probably made about 20, 21, 22 grand off of me.
120%. Because remember, he built your policy to maximize his commission.
Yeah.
I remember looking at his policy and I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So he made it to where
a favor there on that one.
Because think about this. He knew how much capital I had. We'd become, I thought, friends, right? So we would talk and he knew how much capital I had to work with. So he wanted me to put that into an IUL, right? If I put in...
That would have sucked.
Oh, dude. Yeah, real bad. So, but long story short, it all worked out and I learned a lesson. I actually did a 1035 exchange of my policy. My wife's is still intact. We're going to run out the surrender period on hers because she's so young. So the cost of insurance isn't going up much. So we're going to run out the surrender period on hers, which I believe is 11 years. And then whatever the accumulation value and the cash value will match at that point.
Yeah, I don't think people understand IULs. I'm not going to get into an IUL thing, but there's essentially the cash value, which is a hypothetical value based on a hypothetical return that they show you're going to participate in. And they run that thing as a static return, but that's not the amount you can use. The amount you can use is the cash surrender value. You want to talk a little bit about the difference between your cash value and your surrender value?
Yeah, so... I believe it's accumulation value. So
I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, so accumulation value is what it's growing at hypothetically, but to use it, you have surrender charges. So for the first 11 years, those surrender charges dwindle, so you have more and more access to that accumulation value. So your accumulation value could be $200,000, but if your surrender charges are $195,000, you have a cash value, a surrender value of $5,000 that you can use. So in my wife's policy, we're just kind of running out that surrender period of 11 years to where the accumulation value and the cash value are the same. And then we're going to take her policy, 1035 it into a new policy that's whole life. But what I did is I did that right away with mine because I'm older, and the cost of insurance with an IUL, if you guys don't know this, the actual insurance portion of it is term insurance, and it renews every year. So every single year, it's inevitable. We all get older. Unless you guys have found a way to stop the aging process, and if you have, put in the comments because I want to know all about it.
Yeah, me too.
But we all get older. That means we're closer and closer to our expiration date. Therefore, we are more expensive to insure. So every single year, that cost of insurance just keeps going up exponentially the older you get, right? So with mine, I wanted to nip it in the butt because I'm about to be 40, get that thing out of this vehicle that just has so many moving parts and I've already lost a bunch of money on, get it into a whole life policy where I can have access to it right away. And I took that surrender value, that $4,000, put it into a policy for $12,000 a year. I put in $12,000. And because of that surrender value, I instantly had access to $12,000. So if I didn't have that, I'd still have access to $8,000, but because of the surrender value, I put in $12,000, I can use $12,000. And then next year I put in $12,000, I think it's $9,000, which is this year. So crazy story when I think about it, but I wouldn't change it, I don't think. It was a good learning lesson. Yeah.
I think for both of us, I learned how much other agents and advisors can be scumbags, and you learned how agents and advisors can be scumbags.
Right.
So we shared the same lesson.
Yes. And another lesson I have is just to really never do an IUL.
Yeah, well,
The only time I really think it makes sense to do an IUL, and this is just, you might agree, you might not, is if it's on a child's life. Because again,
Such a long time horizon.
yeah, and again, the cost of insurance when you're, like take my daughter, for instance, she's 10 months old. Cost of insurance is pennies at that point. So if you get her an IUL when she's 10 months old, the surrender period's done in 11 years, cost of insurance is still dirt cheap at 11 years old. And you could potentially get a little more return for that money during that time frame in an IUL opposed to whole life. So at that year 11, take it, 1035 exchange it into a whole life, and then have it be constant. Because we both know whole life costs are the exact same from day one till expiration date, right? So I think that's the only time it really makes sense to do an IUL.
I like that idea. Never thought about that. But you're still getting rid of the IUL. You're just doing it when it hits surrender.
Correct. Yeah, so I think that's really the only time where an IUL makes sense. But outside of that, I just don't see them making sense. Even as what they should be used for, which is a retirement play. Even as that, like there's better things, right? So
Much. And another thing too that happened in those early days is you got the policy, you started immediately using it, you were applying it, we did that video, and I'll never forget, you called me up and you were kind of, I remember the tone was a little different. You were kind of, I don't want to say how I would describe it as somebody like talking to you, but they're not confident on how to ask. And you were just like, hey, not for nothing, I've been posting this stuff up and a bunch of people are asking me how to do this and I send them over to you, but can I get paid on that?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, I remember how that happened.
But you were super standoffish about asking, and I'm just like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. So it's so funny when I really think back to the whole story of how everything has happened. It's been the complete opposite of what that other agent said, right? He said that you're going to be the scam artist and blah, blah. And it's been anything but that, right? Like I've met your daughter, I've met your wife. We've been on trips together, hung out. Like I'm in your studio now. You let me borrow one of your Porsches while I was here. So anything but like being a scam artist. And now we work together on different things. And I'll never forget it, man. It was December of 2020 is when I started leaning into the social media. And my third video I ever did on TikTok, it's me sitting in my car. And I'm just like, here's how to get all the money back for any car you'll ever buy, drive, and own. And I just talk about the concept real quick.
Such a good video. Even by today's standards, that was an epic video. I remember seeing that being like, whoa.
And it was because of how I started it. So like anyone wanting to grow a social media following, like you have to keep things engaging visually because it's so easy to swipe away, right? So you need to catch people's attention right away. So what I did on that video is we had our two cars in the garage and then I had my truck outside. So we had three vehicles. My wife's car, it was my Corvette, white Corvette. My wife's car is white too. White Corvette, and then my truck was white, lifted Tacoma. So we liked white cars.
I forgot you had a Tacoma.
That thing was badass.
That was awesome.
So I basically like just panned to all of them, like, here's how you can get all the money back for any car you'll ever buy, drive, and own. So it's like, it's a bold statement because like whoever gets the money back for cars they buy, drive, and own, and you're seeing three cars. It's kind of like everything's moving and you're like, what's going on? It makes you want to keep watching, right? And then it was just me in the car. I had the phone set up on a little thing and I'm just driving, explaining what I did. And I went to bed that night. I think I posted the video at like 4:00 in the afternoon and went to bed, woke up. I had 17,000 followers and just, I've got like hundreds of comments. I'm like, holy crap. Like this is incredible. Kept making those videos, kept growing a following. Within a couple months, I had 200,000 followers on TikTok. And I'm just talking about this concept over and over and over again of how I'm using it with real estate, how I'm using it with cars, how I'm just using the concept.
You got to get to the best part.
People are like, dude, I got to learn this. I got to do it. How do I do it? So yeah, I'm sending everyone to you.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
You're just sending them all to me.
You're like, this guy is amazing. This guy, Mr. Burr, is just, he's amazing.
I remember being like, I don't know how I'm going to handle all these leads from Mr. Burr and also mine. I'm like, but I'll figure it out.
I'm not even paying him. So like this went on, dude, for like what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Where I'm just like sending you business. So this was probably February of 2021. And it hits me one day. I'm in my backyard and I'm about to send you like 30 or 40 more people. Right. And I'm just like, there's gotta be a way I can make money off this. Let me ask Chris. And yeah, I was really like hesitant.
You were
standoffish. I didn't want you to be like, I didn't want you to be a dick about it and be like, no, or just, I don't know. I don't like confrontation. That's just my personality. I try to stay away from it. I think because of how I was when I was younger, I got into a lot of trouble when I was younger, and I get anxiety when I have confrontation. So I try to avoid it. So that conversation, I'm just like, yeah, so I've got 40 more people for you. And you're like, I bet you're just behind the phone, just,
I'm like, pen's ready.
I'm like, dude, is maybe, I don't know. I'm just asking, like, if there is or there isn't.
And that's what it was. It was like, maybe, danced around it.
I'm like, so yeah, could you maybe I could make some money off this? And you were like, hey, do me a favor, Devin. Look around your room. Is there a bush in there? And I'm like, no. And he's like, you're like, because you're beating around it right now.
Did I say that? No, that would have been, that totally is something I would have said. My father, when I was growing up, my dad would, if I would epic. Like do that to my dad, he'd like, stop beating around the bush.
That would have been epic.
Yeah, it would have been, that would have fit perfect.
But no, you were just like, yeah, you could, you can get licensed and be on the team. We could do like an affiliate play. And I'm like, well, okay, which one would be more advantageous for me? And this is where like I gained a lot of respect for you, is you, without even hesitating, you told me getting licensed. What would be more advantageous for you was me being an affiliate.
Big time.
Big time.
I would have, well, you already know how much I would have made, but it's in the millions.
Yes.
Had you not gotten licensed. I should have just told you to go get the bush.
I mean, but hindsight's 20/20, and it's like, you didn't really know what I was going to do. Like you kind of, but
I had an idea though, because I had watched your content. I think back then I watched every piece of content you put out because it was really cutting edge. I mean, you realize like, that was like the early days of TikTok.
Yeah.
Like super early days. Like nobody was really using it except for, kids dancing. That was about the only thing on TikTok back then. There was no financial stuff on there at all.
Right. And that's what I used to think too. I remember when I got on TikTok, I was in a mastermind, December of 2020, and my friend Ricky Morgan, he was in this mastermind, real estate mastermind. And we're going around talking about things. And I'd been talking about this infinite banking concept like nonstop to everybody. And I'm in the mastermind talking about it. And he's like, dude, why don't you get on TikTok, talk about this concept? I'm sure you could grow your following, monetize that somehow. And I'm like, TikTok? My daughter at the time was like 12. And yeah, she'd always do her little dances and pointing at little things on the screen. And I'm like, bro, why would I ever do that? Like, why would I dance on TikTok? And he's like, no, you can get on TikTok. It's like kind of changing. It's shifting from more of like a kid's platform to an adult platform. So you can put out content that's valuable, help people, and then you'll probably grow a following and you can monetize it somehow. So yeah, that was December of 2020. And I think my first couple of videos, I was trying to find viral videos and they were little dance ones. And they're probably in my archive somewhere. They're so cringy.
Dancing videos?
I got to send them to you.
You did dancing videos?
I think so. Nothing too crazy.
You should repost those. That actually might work again.
No.
Oh.
No.
Just saying.
No. I lost my rhythm a long time ago. That ain't happening.
It'd be funny though.
But yeah, now off line, I'm gonna find the videos. I'll send them to you.
Please, that'd be funny. But I might post them.
Definitely not sending them to you.
I'll pay
now.
an affiliate.
Perfect. That works.
So how long did it take you to get licensed? Like when you decided that was the path?
It took me about a month and a half. Longer.
Was it hard?
I thought it was. I barely graduated high school. I definitely wasn't good at taking tests. My version of taking tests was doing this. Just copying off the person next to me, right? and I'd barely passed the test. So I'm sitting next to the wrong person, obviously. I didn't sit next to the smart kids.
That should have been what you learned from school.
Yeah.
Always sit next to the smart kids.
Yeah, that didn't happen. I just sat next to the hot girls. That's all I ever did.
That was the second lesson you should have learned.
But yeah, it took me a while because I remember when I studied for it, there was practice tests on AD Banker. That's where I got my license from. So there was practice tests, and then there was a final practice test. I legitimately thought that was the test to get my license, that practice test. So like I passed the final practice test, and I'm like, oh, I've got my license, yes. So then I'm just kind of waiting around. I think I'm going to get like a license in the mail or something. And then I had like, I think a month-long subscription to AD Banker. So then I talked to you and I'm like, dude, I don't have my license yet. Like, when can I start getting on these cases? And then you started asking some questions and you're like, oh, you haven't taken the actual exam? I'm like, no, I took it on AD Banker. And you're like,
It's a practice exam.
You're like, that's a practice test. And I'm like, oh, so how do I take the test? So then I had to find the local testing facility, go take the test. At this point, it had already been weeks. So I like kind of forgot all the material. I took the test and you're supposed to get like a 70. I got a 68. So I missed it by like one question.
Oh, I think I remember you telling me that, yeah.
So then I had to repurchase AD Banker, go through and start doing the practice tests again. And then I retook the test and got like a 76.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. And then after that, what came next?
So after getting licensed, that was when
you had to get licensed in every state because you were getting all these TikTok leads. That was fun, right?
That wasn't bad because getting licensed in other states, you just pay the fee, right? So it was difficult because when you're doing this, you don't make money right away. Like, and even when you start making money, it's not a ton because of how we structure policies. So I started writing policies, May of 2020 or 2021, licensed in March. So I think my first commission was June of 2021.
Would have been a small commission.
It was $96.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I knew I was putting in all this business. I had like a spreadsheet and I had put in hundreds of cases in a few months. So I'm like, something's got to come from that. So then just blindly, I just kept sending in cases, kept teaching the concept, kept being on phone calls. I was taking, dude, like back to back to back to back to back phone calls, probably 12 calls a day. And I was putting in 9 or 10 of those every day, 9 or 10 cases. And yeah, the commission started coming in and I was like, okay, I can see it. And then I think the next month it was like 9,600. Month after that, it was like 18 grand. And I'm like, okay. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then just kept leaning into teaching people the concept and not really focusing on the money because the money is a byproduct of value, right? If you give value, money will follow. So numbers and money, they always follow. They don't lead, in my opinion.
No, I agree. There was one thing too that I forgot to bring up. And I don't know the math, but I'm going to ask you. So when that financial advisor sold you those 2 IULs, it was $18,000 each, and he probably did. He probably made
total.
18 total.
Yeah.
So 18. So he probably made 20 grand. 20 grand would have been a lot more commission than the entire commission on all those 3 policies you did with me in the beginning. And you put, how much was it that you put with the policies we did for you?
Altogether, $281,000.
So $281,000 in premium went into the specially designed whole life. And I'll almost guarantee you, actually, I know for a fact, the commissions were less on that by quite a bit than those $18,000 policies, those IULs.
Yeah.
Just so the audience knows that, like, literally think about that: $280,000 in premium deposits into the specially designed whole life, and $18,000 into the IUL, but yet the IUL paid a higher commission than the whole lives.
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize.
See, I get people asking me all the time to become an agent and like start selling whole life or selling life insurance, and I always tell people, I'm like, you're in it kind of for the wrong reasons if you're asking me that. Cause like you don't sell life insurance. You teach a concept.
You solve a problem and then people will buy what it is that solves their problem.
Right. Like almost any call I've been on, I'd say 90% of them, and I've been on hundreds, probably thousands of calls at this point. Almost every single one of them ends with, well, cool. How do I do this? Because it's just me teaching a concept and solving a problem, answering questions. And people always ask, well, how do I do it? I'm glad you asked. And then we set the policy up. But I get people asking me like, okay, well, it's not about that. Okay, I can teach a concept. Should I do an IUL or a whole life? And I'm like, you should do whole life for the concept. And then they're like, well, I heard IUL pays more. And I'm like, again, you're thinking about the wrong things. You need to think about, how do I help as many people as possible? The money will follow. Like you and I are both a testament of that. We don't think about making a lot of money. We think about helping a lot of people. Correct. And because of that, the byproduct, we make a lot of money. So the people come first. How do you help a lot of people? Money will follow, period.
So one of the interesting things about you saying that, helping others solve their problem, why is it that the traditional banking system does the complete opposite? Because in reality, that they do not operate with that intent. I mean, a traditional bank does not operate to help its customers, its banking customers do more and make more. They do it solely for their own benefit. So I think that's one thing that's very different about being your own banker and becoming your own banker, what we teach versus what banks do. And yet people are so caught up in the way they've been taught to do things with money, which is make money, deposit it in the bank, and then when they need money, borrow it from the bank. It's the complete opposite. You were mentioning like earlier with that advisor, like he was the bad one and it was the opposite. So this is almost the opposite. Mm-hmm. Banks tell people to do the complete opposite thing that the bank does itself. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. I mean, the entire system is corrupt. I mean, we both know that.
True.
There's been books written about this. Creature of Jekyll Island, great book. Really hard read, but it's a must read, I think, because it shows you just how the entire system is corrupt. And I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about banks is they are inflationary. So when you put money in the bank, they only have to keep a portion of it on deposit, fractional reserve, right? So let's say you put $1,000 in the bank, they have to keep $100 on deposit. Yet the ledger still says 1,000 in your account, right? So that's money in the economy because you can use it. What they do is they take 900, they lend it out. They literally just created $900 out of thin air, right? And inflation is just that. Like the more dollars there are, the less valuable they are, each one of them. It's like anything. If you're stuck in the middle of a desert and you have a bottle of water, you'll pay anything to get that one bottle. If there's millions of bottles of water, they're not as valuable, right? So it's the same kind of thing. Is banks are inflationary because of the fractional reserve. They create more money, meaning they inflate everything, devaluing the dollar. What I love about life insurance, specific designed life insurance that we use for infinite banking, is that it's not inflationary. When you put money into a policy and you borrow against it, you're borrowing the insurance company's money, right? From their general funds. That's the only thing they can lend out. If they've got $1 billion, they have more. Let's say $1 billion in that general account, they earmark what they think they're going to have to pay out for death claims, right? The rest of it, they're going to go use to go make more money. One of the ways they do that is they lend to you and I as policyholders and charge an interest rate. And that is the least risky loan they have because you're going to pay it back tomorrow or you're going to pay it back when you pass away. Because if you never pay it back, they just deduct it from your death benefit. So there's no risk for them.
Pretty much a risk-free loan.
It's 100% a risk-free loan for them. So it makes it to where it's not inflationary. They can only lend what they have. Opposed to a bank, they cause inflation by lending what they don't have. Yep. They create money out of thin air.
The Treasury prints it. The Fed controls the monetary policy for how much they print. and voila, money out of pure existence. And people are so mistaken about inflation, but I understand it. People, when they hear the word inflation, they think of, okay, groceries just went up in cost. The price of my car went up. The price of, gas went up. They think the price goes up on anything, which really what inflation is when they print all this new money into existence, which you just described. Each one of those new dollars they print takes money. The value comes from our existing dollars in circulation. So a new dollar takes value away from our existing circulating money. Therefore, our dollars simply buy less. So it's not really a component of the price going up. It's just it takes more dollars to buy the same goods and services. So it appears to the public that the price went up, which I guess it did, but really it was just your dollar went down in value. It's a hidden tax in its final hour. It really is.
You guys should all rewind that and re-listen to it, because most people do not understand what you just said. Most people, even like my wife, will say things like that. She'll be like, oh, man, the cost of bread is so much higher than it used to be. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just it takes more dollars to get the bread. Mm-hmm. The bread's not more expensive. You just have to use more dollars to get it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Yeah,
because each one is worth less than it used to be.
And it's a trickle down. And so like they print a dollar, it makes your dollar worth less, which means you need more dollars to go out and buy the same goods. But now all of a sudden, because of that, now the people that were making that bread need to earn more to make the same goods and services. Like they don't make more. They got to they need to make more to be able to live. Right. And as inflation kicks in and goes higher and higher, everything must follow. So it's a trickle-down effect, which makes it such a severe problem. I mean, inflation's a big problem, but there's a lot worse than inflation. But I will say we just went through an inflationary period where they printed $5.2 trillion into existence for COVID and the pandemic. Obviously, that money all circulated. Everybody felt rich, and now all of a sudden people feel poor. That's always the effect of massive money printing. You have that immediate, oh my God, we're rich. We got all this money. The government's handing money out, or they're not handing money out, or they are, but now they're not. And then all of a sudden the Fed kicks in. It's like, oh, we got to slay the dragon of inflation. We got to raise interest rates. Now they raise interest rates. Goods and services already appear to have cost a lot more because of the dollar buying less. But now all of a sudden it costs more to borrow money to buy the things that you would normally, have to borrow money to buy, like cars and houses. Right. Dude, it just gets out of control. And we just saw it all happen. But yet people don't even understand what it is.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember a video I made. This was right when the stimulus checks happened. So I can't remember exactly when that was, but everyone's so excited about their stimulus checks. Oh, I got $1,400. Oh, I got $1,200, whatever it was. And I made a video and I'm like, I know you guys are all real excited about this check you're getting from the government. You think it's free money. I can tell you this much, it's not. You're going to pay for it some way, somehow. The cost of gas. So like how much dollars it takes to get gas, it's going up. The cost of water, it's going up. Everything so now you took this money that you thought was free money, but basically all it did is it made everything cost more, or cost more dollars. You had to spend more to get it. And I got so much hate on that post. People were like, oh, if you don't want the $1,400, I'll take it, blah, blah. And it's like, I didn't get the $1,400 because I'm a business owner. And when you make over a certain amount, you didn't get it. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't even get it. So you can't get it from me. It was one of those videos where it went viral and everyone was just like, this guy, blah, blah, blah. TikTok there was some keyboard warriors in there.
Oh, the haters gone wild, man. That was TikTok.
100%. 100%. Haters need hugs too, though.
Haters need hugs too. Oh God, you remember that? I made that shirt and the hat. I got to remake those. Haters need hugs too. And I made it solely because of the hate that I got on TikTok.
Yeah. Good old TikTok.
I don't even post on TikTok. Do we even post on TikTok now? I don't know.
I still post, but I don't think it gets any traction. It's weird. TikTok's owned by China or something.
It just shut down. It went from so many people were making a living from the leads they were getting off TikTok, and it just flatlined. Yeah. A lot of people had to refigure out social media because they thought TikTok was the answer and they had it figured out. And the gravy
here's
train
a little conspiracy. I think this is what I believe. If it's true, it's true. If it's not, it's not. So TikTok got purchased by China, right? So basically what I think happens is anything that's of value in China, TikTok's going to push it, right? So anything in China to make those people smarter, learn more, be more efficient, whatever. In the US, what's pushed? Women shaking their booties, and all I see is that and like pranks in the supermarket. I'm like, this is so freaking stupid. There's no value there. Zero. So everyone in America is getting pushed all the BS that makes us dumber. In China, they're getting pushed all the stuff that makes them smarter financially, all kinds of stuff. So that's my conspiracy. I don't know. I don't know if it's true, but
maybe not, but we'll go with it. Yes. Plenty of conspiracy theories right now. Like, so we don't even need to.
What's your favorite?
My favorite conspiracy theory?
Current or old? You can go in the archives for this one.
Wow, you really stumped me because there's so many. I'm trying to think what one would be my favorite, which would be the one that I hate the most.
I'll tell you mine while you're thinking of yours.
Give me yours and I'll think of mine, yeah.
So mine...
I had so many going on in my head.
It literally irks me when I hear this. Flat earthers. People that think the earth is flat. Like, I just can't get on board with it. For one, you're telling me there's an entire hoax where we sent people up on the moon. We do all these things, pictures, everything, just to keep that the world is round. What's the benefit there for people thinking the world's round opposed to flat, right? And here's the argument I always give people that are flat earthers, and they come up with the stupidest answers. So if the earth is flat, let's say I'm flying from California to Europe, Asia. If the world's flat, if I just kept going, wouldn't I just be way the heck over there, not back in California? Wouldn't I be off in La La Land in space somewhere? But no, if I just kept going, I end up back in California.
Listen, man, they legalized weed. Do I need to say anything else? Flat earthers, that conspiracy theory doesn't bother me at all.
It irks me.
Because those are people I would never be able to have a conversation with, period. Which brings me to my conspiracy theory that I think is the one that irks me the most and drives me absolutely crazy. And I had to think about all of the ones. But when the government or politicians come out and say, we're only going to tax the rich. And you remember that? Like tax the rich, that whole movement that they had. That blows me away that's literally what people think they're doing. They literally, so like the people saying tax the rich are the rich or the wealthy. They are the ones that don't want to pay taxes and actually don't pay taxes. But yet they're saying tax the rich, which tax my buddy over here. Tax this person over here, who's, by the way, my neighbor. Tax that person over there, which just donated to my campaign. That whole thing, and I remember there was something about like, we're only going to tax people that make more than $400,000. And people bought into that, thinking that's the only people that have their taxes go up. I urge everybody that believes that conspiracy theory to go back to their tax return that year and tell me, did you pay more or less? They all paid more because everybody's taxes went up, not just people making $400,000. Matter of fact, the ones that paid less were the wealthy because they already know the tax code. They have the CPAs and all the people that know. They're not beating the system. They're not trying to evade taxes. They're just following the tax code. But yet people believe that. We're going to tax the rich. And that shit still goes on today. Mm-hmm. That's a conspiracy theory that's absolutely bullshit, just complete bullshit.
It actually really is, man, because this last year, my dad, like blue-collar guy, worked in HVAC his entire life, never made over like 80 grand a year. And he hits me up and he's like, son, like, I don't know what's going on with my taxes. Like last year we paid this much. Or we got a return, I think, of this much. This year, it's less. And I'm like, okay, well, did you pay more or less in taxes? He's like, we paid the same. I had the same amount withdrawn from my checks. I'm like, did you make more? And he's like, no, I made exactly the same amount as I made last year. I'm like, did anything change with your income? He's like, no, exactly the same. I'm like, okay, it's just because the tax bracket's changed. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, where you're taxed at just changed. That's it. So you had to pay more taxes than you did last year because of the tax brackets. Therefore, you're going to get less because you didn't pay as much as you should have. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. And I showed him, he's like, oh. But like taxing the rich, it's actually something that's kind of funny to think about, because when taxing the rich is said, I think it's more or less like rich people are technically anyone that makes over like 350 grand. You're like,
I believe that's what they say rich is.
You're considered rich at that point in most places. So
basically the middle class.
Right. So
upper middle class.
Think about like a doctor, a lawyer, people that make like a good income, W-2, they're rich. They're not wealthy. They're rich. You can become filthy rich where you're making millions and millions and millions of dollars. Take like a pro athlete. They're filthy rich. They're on a W-2. They get taxed a ton, but they're filthy rich, right? They're not wealthy. They can become wealthy, but wealthy is buying assets, having your money work for you instead of you working for it, trading your time for dollars instead of your dollars working for you all the time, right? You can only work so much because we're only awake so much. Dollars never sleep.
Right.
So wealthy people don't get taxed. They evade the taxes legally through the tax code because there's incentives for them. That's all the tax code is a incentives of how to pay less taxes. The bulk of it is that. There's a small portion of it that's how to pay taxes. But if you're W-2'd, there's only a few incentives.
So it shouldn't have said tax the rich. You should have said tax the middle class.
Tax the high income earning W-2 employee. Yeah. That's really what it is. The wealthy individuals, they don't get taxed because they're buying real estate.
There's
they're
another
doing
conspiracy theory. I mean, the middle class, most of the middle class wealth is held in real estate. So if you remember a couple of years back, it was very prevalent in the news. You heard about companies like Blackstone, BlackRock, and I guess I'll throw Vanguard in there because those are like the three big ones. They were buying up neighborhoods. They were buying up just about every house that they could get their hands on. And then Zillow and other companies like that jumped on board. So these are all institutions buying single family and houses that the middle class would typically own. And they would pay more than you and I or any middle class buyer could pay. They would just pay premium dollars. And, someone like us that we're looking for a family home would be like, I'm not paying that. Well, we got a buyer at this. So if you want it, you gotta beat their price. Well, I'm out. And therefore, it is a fact there are less homes owned by the middle class than there was in the past. What a lot of people would then say to that same comment is they'd be like, yeah, but then those companies had to sell those houses off at a loss. And I would say, no, you're absolutely incorrect on that. Zillow, who is not as big as BlackRock, Blackstone, or Vanguard, did because they got in a little bit over their head. They had a business strategy. Vanguard, BlackRock, Blackstone is very different than Zillow. Zillow's just a tiny little baby compared to those big funds. And Zillow was buying them because Zillow had a mortgage. Remember, they created a mortgage division. Mm-hmm. So they said, okay, well, we can basically buy these houses. Then what we can do is put a little bit of money into them because remember, they were hiring crews, renovate them, and then we can sell them. Even if we sell them at cost, we'll do the mortgage on them and we'll make all the money on the mortgage because all the money is made in the first 7 years on a mortgage. So that was their plan. Well, that's a really long-term plan. So if things didn't go perfect for Zillow, which they didn't because the Fed jumped interest rates, which hurt them bad, all of a sudden they got themselves upside down. They had to sell a bunch of those houses for a loss. But if anyone was listening to this, if you thought all those companies were dumping the real estate, do some due diligence and you will find Blackstone, BlackRock, Vanguard, they still own tons of real estate that used to be owned by the middle class.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing about interest rates that most people don't really realize is when like rates come down, it's good obviously for everybody when rates are lower. If you're a homeowner, you can afford a bigger house, a more expensive house because the rate is lower. If you are in business, you can take on that money at a lower interest rate, right? And businesses, they look long-term projects, they base it on lower interest, right? Like Zillow, for instance, they base that on a lower interest rate because it's a long-term project. It's going to take a while, 6, 7, 8 years. When rates go up during that, it throws everything off because they planned long-term with short-term variations in the market. Rates go up and down. They don't stay level generally, right? Unless, like you and I like so much, life insurance. It doesn't go all crazy.
It's not tied to Fed rate or prime at all.
So the borrowing rate is kind of based on, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is how I understand it. The borrowing rate is based on kind of what their overall portfolio is doing. So if the market is a lot higher, right? So market rates are higher. Through the general funds, the insurance companies can go make a little bit more money. So if they're making 7-8% in different things that they're investing in, and they're lending to you at 5%, if they've got a bunch lent at 5%, that doesn't make sense. If they can go lend all that at 7-8%, they have a small amount lent to 5% because not many people are taking policy loans. Yeah, let's keep it at 5% because it's just a small portion of our portfolio where the rest of it we're making 7, 8, 9%, whatever it is. And if that changes, rates go down and they're lending at 4, 5, 3, whatever it is, and they still can lend at 5 to you, that's why it doesn't change much.
Because they're always playing the long game. But, insurance companies, unlike banks, they tie their borrowing rate, like the loan, well, I shouldn't say borrowing rate, but the loan interest rate is tied to the LIBOR bond index, where a bank is tied to the Fed funds rate, the overnight rate and the prime rate. So different levels of lending, but the bank ties them to that. Mm-hmm. So they're very, they move a lot. They're always changing. So that's, I think, one of the nice things. But you nailed it because the insurance company is playing a really long game. A bank is not playing as long of a game as an insurance company. So an insurance company, like you just said, they've got hundreds of billions of dollars in their general fund invested very conservatively. And as interest rates go up, they gobble up more and more long-term debt or long-term treasuries or lend more money out at higher rates. So those are stabilized for, let's say, 30 years. They're making the same return for 30 years. Then when rates come down, they're getting that tailwind from that there. So when rates come down, they're getting the blend. They're still doing better in most cases than the bank that is literally just churning it. That's not the right word, but they're constantly moving with those high, fast-moving prime and overnight rates.
Another thing too, and this is, I really dislike IULs for obvious reasons that we talked about, but at the same time, they help guys like you and I that have mutually owned contracts.
Really?
Hear me out on this.
They help me? So usually when someone says IUL, I'm about ready to fight. I'm like 2 steps away from a fight.
I saw your face change quite a bit.
Yeah. I'm just like, I don't like IULs.
So hear me out on this.
They don't help me.
If you and I have insurance policies, which we both have a lot of them, I have 15, you have 11,
I just
12?
did 2 or 3 more, so I'm probably pretty close to you now.
Cool. So we both have, let's call it
14,
15 policies. They're all with mutually owned companies.
Everyone.
So mutually owned obviously means that we are a part owner of that business. So when that business is profitable with everything they're doing with those hundreds of billions of dollars, they share in those profits with us through dividends.
Oh, but Dave Ramsey says dividends are nothing more than a return of unused premiums.
Which is great because then they're not taxable.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, like we're getting these dividends that are tax-free, that add to our cash value, that continues to compound and grow, tax-free, that we can use right away, right? So if we're getting these dividends based on the profitability of the company, I actually love term insurance now too that I think about it because
I love term.
It's the most profitable insurance policy there is. It only pays out less than 2% of the time. So think about that. It's very profitable for the insurance company, therefore helps them get a bigger dividend to me. An IUL is a profit center for the insurance company. So I
see where you're going with that.
It helps the company be more profitable because it takes the risk off of them and puts it on the actual policyholder.
Yeah, it sure does. It takes all the risk off the insurance company, plops it on the client who thinks they're going to sail off into the sunset because the returns they're showing on a piece of paper that is completely hypothetical. And that thing that me and Chris did, where we offered up $10,000 to any IUL agent.
The IUL challenge.
The IUL challenge. Yeah. To any IUL agent that can bring us an illustration that was started 10 years ago or longer, okay, and a current in-force illustration. So they have to have a policy 10 years old or older, because that's the longest bull run in history. Like literally, if you go 10 years back, there really has been no downturns in the market outside of that short little blip during COVID, but then it was followed by just massive growth. So like 10 years is the perfect time for an IUL agent to be able to
crush it.
Yeah, we should have been having to hand out $10,000 checks. But not one agent has brought a 10-year-old IUL policy to us, shown us the original illustration and what they showed, and then an in-force illustration that beat the one shown. So if they always, they'll project different hypotheticals, but let's just say they showed one at 7%. And they're like, oh, the S&P 500, the index, is always averaged 8 something, whatever they say. Okay, well then 7 should be no problem, right? Especially in a 10-year crazy bull run like this. So when now 10 years or longer, you should be able to show every illustration beating the one that you showed to the client 10 years ago. Yeah. Should be not even an issue.
Right.
Not one.
And not one can do it.
And we're all talking about it on our podcast, on our YouTube, every time we're out there. It's not like people don't know this. I've had people on our webinar say, oh, we have one of those. You're going to be writing me a check for 10 grand. Listen, I'd be happy to write a check for 10 grand. And then I'll have you on the show to show how you did this. And what did you do that the other 99.999% of the IUL agents did to not be able to do what you just did. Not one person's brought one, even though they said that they were going to. Like, dude, if somebody told me I could get 10 grand for showing them 2 pieces of paper that I have in a file or saved on a computer, shoot, dude, you'd be writing me a check for 10 grand.
Right.
But you can't, because the IUL shows a static return of the same amount, 7%. They're saying you're going to make 7% every single year. So where they go wrong is, even in the longest bull run in history, we did have a little downturn for the pandemic. So those years, maybe they got 0, that 1 year, they got 0. So that one down year amongst all those other good years would make it so that policy could not average 7% over a 10-year time frame.
Right.
People just don't do the math.
They are a profit center for the insurance company.
I went down a rabbit hole there, sorry.
I love it. And I tell clients this too, is I've had some clients where like they're like ready to do a policy with me, but then they're like, I don't know, I kind of want to do the IUL. Like I hear this. They're kind of using another agent against me, trying to get a better deal. And when we literally put all the cards on the table, here's the policy. I'll be so transparent with people. I'll show them what my commissions are going to be. I'm like, look, here's what the commissions be. Here's the base. Here's how much I make off the base. Here's the paid up additions. Here's how much I make off the paid up additions. And I'll show them literally that contract. I'll show them that's what I get paid through the insurance company. So I'll show them. You did
a video showing that.
Yeah, this is how much I make. And I mean, it can't be more transparent than that. So then I'll tell people, I'm like, all right, well, do the IUL if you feel better about it. Just know that I'm happy either way. I'm happy to help you with this policy, the right one for infinite banking. But if you do the IUL, you're helping me make a bigger dividend. And they'll be like, what do you mean? And I tell them, well, it's a profit center for the insurance company. If it was so good, wouldn't the insurance company do exactly what they're saying, which is buy call options? They would just put all of their capital in the general funds into the IUL strategy. Guess how much they have in their general funds? Zero. In that strategy.
We see their general funds.
Right.
We know exactly what their balance sheet looks like because it's public information.
Right. So I'll tell clients, I'm like, look, do the IUL if you have to. I'm fine either way. It helps me be more profitable.
Let's keep going with that because this is good shit. Banks, traditional banks. We opened up with traditional banks. So traditional banks are the number one purchasers of BOLI, bank-owned life insurance, which is basically a whole life policy, but it's done for banks. So if banks are the number one purchasers of whole life, and anyone watching this, you can prove it to yourself. Go to fdic.gov. I show this all the time. We just did it this morning. As of 2023, what was it?
202.4 billion.
200, what did you say?
202.4.
$202.4 billion in BOLI, bank-owned life insurance. You can't walk into a bank that I know of and buy whole life insurance. They will gladly sell you IULs. They will gladly sell you VULs, and they would be happy to sell you a term policy and invest the difference in a high-fee managed account that they do absolutely no management of. Think about a bank. Think about a bank advisor. I know many of them, and I got nothing bad to say about them, but like they got thousands of clients. The bank sends them all their premier clients, and they just rope them in, put them into these things. Do you think that financial advisor is sitting back at any part in their day managing those clients' investments? Hell no. They're meeting with this person. That person leaves. They got another person out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. 5 o'clock, out, gone, bye. Back at 9 in the morning, out, in, hour-long break for lunch. And they probably get coffee breaks too. But anyway, out, in, out, gone. So when are they actually managing the investments? How do I know this? Well, because I was a financial advisor for 16 years, because I interviewed with many banks, because I'm like, that's pretty cool. I don't even have to go out and find clients. They just bring them to me. And then I started thinking to myself, I'm like, when do you guys actually manage these assets? Oh, well, we don't. We put them in a nice diversified portfolio, or we find a good managed account. Yeah, it was all mutual funds back then. Or we find a nice managed account, like an SMA account, separately managed. And I'm like, well, who's managing the separately managed account? Well, they are. The institution is. Rothschild? Oh, okay. And they've got how many clients? So like the deeper down the rabbit hole you get, the more and more you start to realize it's all smoke and mirrors. There's nobody managing your assets. They just put you in and now to prove that, they have come out with 401k mutual funds that are called freedom date or target date funds. And they're like, hey, when do you want to retire? 2045, great. Put your money in the 2045 fund. And it's going to self-manage. And as you get closer to retirement, it's going to get more and more conservative. And you're going to ride off into the sunset. You're going to have so much freaking money. You're never going to need to worry about it. And nobody's got to touch it. But the fees on those funds are higher than any other fund out there.
The wild thing is, this is exactly what the American public we're indoctrinated into. Like, this is what we're taught, right? We're taught to go to school, get a good job.
Which school trains you for.
Right. Get a good job, get promoted, make more money, so then you get taxed more. Put your money into a 401k, and then you'll be set during retirement.
But you get a tax deduction for the 401k at today's tax rate.
So you delay taxes on what you know taxes are to pay them in the future when you have no idea. Taxes
are going up.
They go down.
Anyone think taxes are going down in the future? Okay, taxes are going up.
They go up, they don't go down, right? So we give up control of our money now when it's worth the most to have access to it later when it's worth less because of inflation. We've already touched on that. And the crazy part about it is, if you look at statistics, the average person right now, when they retire, their 401k, guess how much it is?
$300?
About $350,000. So think about this.
I love the studio audience. Did you hear that? Shit. That was the only thing I heard from the studio audience.
but think about this. As of today, the average household income is about $80,000, okay? Before taxes, right? So if you have an average income of $80,000, and then when you retire, you have $350,000. Now you're trying to tell me, I'm used to making 80. And now I have to make 350 stretch for the rest of my life.
You can't.
It will not
even
work.
Mathematically possible.
It will not work.
But Dave Ramsey says you can. All you got to do is invest with one of his certified financial advisors into one of those really good mutual funds that Dave only knows about that have like a 13% return. Oh, and by the way, there's not ever going to be any fluctuation in the returns, according to Dave. And I'm joking, folks. Like, don't go back
buy
to
term,
Dave.
invest the difference, buy it from Dave. Because he sells term insurance.
And then by the way, the money you invested, the difference, like that money you can't spend because that money's got to be left for your kids so that they're left with a legacy. Because remember, you don't have any life insurance when you die because the term insurance, of course, is expired. Less than 2% of all term policies are ever paid out on, and the insurance companies love that.
This is so fresh in my mind because my dad, I helped my dad retire earlier this year. I actually got him a policy. It's on his life. I'm the owner, or I should say my trust is the owner. And I put money in, and then I give him the cash value as a loan. There's no taxes. He never has to pay it back. So I'm giving it to him as like retirement income. And because of the way the compound interest works, it's going to keep going up. So I can keep giving him more. He never has to pay me back. When he dies, it's inevitable. The death benefit is going to pay off all the loans. The surplus goes to my trust. And then I take that money and buy more policies on my kids, his grandkids. I did this for my mom and my father-in-law. So, my sell to them were like, look, you don't have to do anything, but just take the exam. I'm going to give you more money every single year, tax-free. You never have to pay me back. And you're going to be helping build a legacy for the family, because when you pass away, the surplus is going to buy more policies on your grandkids, my kids. So they were like, yeah, let's do it. Perfect. Part of that is I helped my dad retire. He also had to retire. His 401k was $314,000.
Right in line with the median average.
Right. And he's been putting into it every single year. I think the max, right? Or close to it.
Close to.
So he hits me up and he's like, son, thank you so much for the money. Like, I sent him a monthly check. Thank you so much for the money. It's really helping, but I'm kind of scared. I don't know how I'm going to make this money last. Like, things are getting more expensive. He's talking about cost of everything's going up. I'm like, Dad, I didn't want to go into that, but the cost isn't going up. It's just the dollar's worth less, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's usually a dead issue. You don't even want to go there.
I didn't even bring it up. I'm like, yeah, it's more expensive for everything. I get it. So he's like, yeah, you're giving us this money each month, but it's still kind of tight. Like, how do I use this retirement, make it last? Do I keep it here? I've got the freedom fund, blah, blah. I'm like, Dad, get it out of that 401k traditional, put it into a self-directed. So we did a self-directed over to Horizon, Greg Herlean, Horizon Trust. And now I'm helping him do investments that I do. And it's all growing.
Private lending.
Yeah. It's all growing within that IRA, tax-free, because it was a Roth. So it's growing tax-free. And then I came up with a plan for him. Like, look, we're going to make, let's just say rough numbers, 20 grand this year. Take 10 to supplement your income, have the other 10 keep growing. So then next year, you'll have more that you can use. So that you'll make more. So if you have more and you make more, you'll have more that you can take of the half.
Every year.
Right. And then, so I got him on this plan, and this is all fresh to me because he was like blown away. He's like, son, I'm so proud of you. Like, you were never good with your hands. And like, if I give you a hammer, you didn't know how to swing it. Like I was that son. My brother was like super handy, could fix anything, take things apart, put them back together. I could never even do any of that. He's like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're so much different than your brother. Use your mind to like create this. You're creating an empire. I can see it. And like, what you've done to help me is just incredible. Like, how did you learn all this stuff? And I'm like, I just learned it, Dad. Like, anyone can learn it. It's not hard, but you have to spend time learning it. Like, I'm a firm believer you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So if I really wanted to become a really good mechanic, I could do it.
Sure.
I would just have to learn how. I don't want to. Like, I hate working on stuff. My wife will be like, can you change the air filters? And I'm like, literally, we have air filters in the closet, a bunch of them. She's like, can you change the air filter? I'm like, yeah, sure. Didn't happen. So then she takes the air filters and she puts them on the bar upstairs, right below the air filters where they go. They've been sitting on that bar for like a week. I just hate doing stuff like that, right? That's just my personality. But if I wanted to be super handy, if I wanted to do whatever, I could do it. I just don't want to, right? You can do anything. You just can't do everything.
How you do one thing is how you do everything. You know, an interesting thing, that whole story about your dad on how, you know, you're helping them, but then at the end, when they graduate and go on to heaven, you're made whole. Did you come up with all that? Because I swear that I heard that the banks do the same darn thing, and that's the reason there's so many vice presidents at the bank. I always wonder, when you go into a traditional bank, and folks, like, you riddle me this, you know, why is it that everybody's a vice president at the bank? You're a vice president, you're a vice president, you're a vice president. How did you get to be a vice president? Everybody's a vice president.
I've got a good story for that. It's too funny that you say that because, yeah, all the banks do is BOLI, bank-owned life insurance. People are like, well, how can a bank get life insurance? It's a bank. And what they do is it's like key man insurance. They insure someone who's key to the business. And a teller's not key to the business, but a vice president is.
Because they're an executive of the bank.
They're a key employee. So what they do is they promote someone to a VP of paper shredding, a VP of sweeping, whatever it is, right? They promote them, and part of the promotion is a fully paid up life insurance policy. They don't got to pay a penny into it. And if they die during their employment, their family gets 50 grand or whatever it is. How much is that policy really paying? $1 million, $2 million?
Easy.
So funny story is I was in the bank, this was maybe a year or so ago, and I see on the little nameplate, VP of sales, right? I'm talking to one of the bankers, and I asked him, I was like, oh, dude, when did you become a VP? And he's like, oh, blah, blah. He's telling me when it was. I was like, how much was your life insurance policy they fully paid up for you? He's like, how'd you know they did that? I'm like, oh, that's just what they do, right? And he's like, he had no idea. He's like,
He thought he was special.
he was like,
He thought he was special.
he was like, oh, it was like, I don't know, 50 grand, 75 grand. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was part of your promotion though, right? And he's like, how'd you know that? And I'm like, that's what they do. They promoted you. And then I told him how life insurance works. And he's like, wait, so the bank owns billions of dollars of life insurance and some of it's on me? I'm like,
people just like me?
yeah. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, you can look it up. Boley, bank-owned life insurance. He was blown away. He had no freaking clue how it worked.
Well, you should have then told him, hey, you know what else you get? You got a deferred comp, didn't you? When you got that promotion, they offered you a deferred comp. All you got to do is spend the next 20 years at this shithole, and we're going to, after the 20th year, we're going to start sending you a paycheck even when you're retired. And that's going to be your deferred comp. Oh, and we're going to give you health benefits. No one ever wonders, how does the bank fund all that? Could it be the cash value of all the bully that funds their benefits package? Well, it sure the hell is.
100%.
And all that money's liquid to the bank. The bank gets to use it over and over and over again. It satisfies their tier 1 requirements for the government so that they're secure with guaranteed assets of that measly 10% that they have to hold in reserves.
Dude, I think it's funny that all that happens and the employees have zero clue. I've even asked employees at the bank before, I'm like, hey, can, I think one was trying to sell me on getting a new checking account because it gave me $250 to open one. And I was like, no, I don't want to put any more money at your bank. What I want to do actually is put my money where you guys put your money. Can you help me? Can you help me do that? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I want to put my money where the bank puts the money. He's like, I'm not following you. I'm like, the bank? Where do they put their money? He's like, it was deer in headlights. I was like, this guy has zero clue what's going on. And he was a VP.
Wow, you might have to go up a couple pay grades. You go to the CFO of the bank, and they absolutely
100%.
can tell you exactly how much they have in bully. I know a couple people that own banks, like the family that owns the banks out in Texas. And I talk to him all the time, and we always have discussions. He's like, yeah, our family has this much in bully. Yeah, all of our key executives get it in their bonus packages. Yeah, they know all about it. All about it.
So funny. Most people they don't know how banks work. Most don't. Some people do. The people that kind of know how banks work with fractional reserve lending and like they can create money out of thin air legally, which is crazy. I had a buddy of mine that I was telling about life insurance and becoming your own bank. I'm telling him all the benefits to it. And then like a day or two later, he's like, dude, I want to start a bank. I'm like, why? And he's like, kidding me? Why would I not want to be my own? Why would I not have my own bank? I'm like, dude, what was I talking to you about 2 days ago? Becoming the bank. And he's like, no, but banks can create money out of thin air. Like your policy can't do that. And I'm like, well, it kind of can. So think about this. My first policy, I did that bigger one, 125 grand, actually a second policy. I put in 125. I could immediately use 109, right? So 125 is sitting there compounding and growing tax-free. So I've got 125 grand working here. I've got 109 working over here. So what is that? It's $234,000. I've got $234,000 working for me, but I only put in 125. I kind of created money out of thin air.
Dang, I've never looked at it like that.
And it gets better and better and better the longer you have it. So I told him that, and he's like, oh. And it clicked. It's like, I should probably do a policy, right? I'm like, yeah. So
I always love it in the 90-minute presentation that we do. There's that chiropractor example.
Yeah.
And by the sixth year, he puts in $25,000 or puts in $10,000. Sorry, I'm getting the two examples. Puts in 10 grand and takes out 13,000 the same year. And I asked the audience, what was his cash on cash return on that 10,000? He put in 10, he took out 13. How much did that 10 grand have to earn to do that? And people are like, 30%. I'm like, yes, 30%. And did he have to take on any risk, work any harder, or, do anything different? No. His money was working for him. And people can't comprehend that. But yet they're so fast to say, yeah, but to use the money, I got to borrow it from the insurance company. I'm like, yeah, let's say that's 5.2. What's 5.2 minus 30? Does it matter?
Yeah.
Are you making that much on your 401k? You making that much with your broker, that really smart broker? No. And you have to pay them? Like, you don't have to pay that.
And that's not to mention what you can make with the 13.
Oh, well, yeah, but I mean, I'm just hitting it from the surface level.
Just the policy.
Every single policy will have that point where you put in 10 grand, you can take 13. And next year you put in 10 grand, you're going to take out more than 13. Then after that, it's just more and more. That's the beauty of it. It's always more.
Right. Dude, policies are one of those things where at the surface level, it's actually very, very simple. It really is.
It's too simple.
It's very, very simple. You're literally just borrowing against an asset that never stops growing. That's it. Your money is the asset, your cash that you're putting in. It's the asset that you're borrowing against. So you're using your money as collateral. You're just borrowing against that collateral. You're borrowing from your future death benefit using your money as the collateral. If you don't pay it back, they take the collateral, pay your family less what you didn't pay back. It's very simple. But the way you can use that concept is infinite, right? So I think that's where people get confused because there's so many different ways you can do it, but at its core, you're just borrowing from an asset. You could borrow from your house. Your house could be an asset if you've got equity in it, right? You're borrowing the bank's money. They're using your house as collateral. Your equity is what you can borrow and use. It's the same thing. It's just the policy is guaranteed to go up. A house isn't. You can borrow against your stocks. Your stocks aren't guaranteed to go up. They're up, down, sideways, left, right. You're literally with infinite banking just borrowing against an asset that's guaranteed to go up. That's it.
So since it's so simple, let's wrap on that. How do people learn more about becoming their own bank?
So yeah, they can learn more from me. You guys can check out the link in my bio on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I have a link where you can watch a training video. You kind of alluded to it with the chiropractor. So we give examples of how to get out of debt, how to buy cars and get all the money back for any car you'll ever buy, drive, and own. It literally shows examples and real numbers and walks you through that concept. So you can register for that video. At the end, you can schedule a call with someone on my team, our team. And again, I touched on this before. We do not sell life insurance. You'll never be sold life insurance by us. I think you can agree with this. If someone on our team is selling, they're not in trouble. They're not on our team anymore.
No, they get taken off the round robin.
Right. We do not sell. That's not who we are. We teach a concept.
That's it.
So on these calls, you're not going to be sold. You will be taught how this works. We'll answer all your questions. And once you really understand infinite banking, you just want it if you really understand it. So all we do is we just explain it, show you how it works, answer your questions. End of the call, you're like, let's do it. How do I do it? So check out that video, guys.
Great. All right, folks, there it is. Watch that video. Check Devin Burr out on any social media platform from YouTube to TikTok, Instagram. He's got a lot of content on Instagram. But with that being said, thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Money School podcast. It's time for you to go out there and take back control of your money by being your own bank. See you next time.